Why did she always hear more than others? The echoes of distant gunfire rolled across the hills surrounding Fort, but to most, it was just noise, sharp cracks on the wind, muffled by trees and distance. To Maya Johnson, it was a language. She stood motionless in the armory, an M4 carbine disassembled on the workbench before her, her calloused hands frozen mid-motion. Through the open window she counted the reports, separated them by rhythm and tone. 4 shooters, M82s, roughly 1,500 meters out. She could tell one shooter was compensating poorly for a 12-mile-an-hour crosswind. His grouping would be loose, scattered, betraying impatience. To Maya, the gunfire wasn't just violence. It was a story written in powder and lead. At 29, Maya had perfected the art of invisibility. 5 years working inside Fort's sprawling military complex, maintaining the weapons of America's most elite, had taught her that anonymity was safety. She wore the role like a second skin. Her uniform always crisp, her dark hair tied back in a neat, practical bun. She spoke little, moved with precision, and let the noise of others pass by. To most, she was no one, just another armorer. That was exactly how she wanted it. Few suspected that the quiet technician could field strip any weapon in the arsenal blindfolded. Fewer still knew she could read the wind by the way dust settled on the concrete outside. No one guessed that her father's name still echoed in whispered legends among special operations veterans, a name never spoken too loudly, because it belonged to a man both feared and revered, Master Sergeant David "Ghost" Johnson. But Maya kept those truths locked away. She kept everything locked away. The armory was her sanctuary. Its walls brimmed with rifles, carbines, pistols, and machine guns, instruments of war, organized in perfect silence. Unlike people, weapons were honest. They did what they were designed to do, nothing more, nothing less. There was comfort in that. Inside her small toolkit, tucked between oil brushes and torque wrenches, lay a faded photograph. She carried it everywhere, even if she never let anyone see it. Her father was caught in the frame, his weathered face softened by an unguarded smile during a fishing trip 3 years before cancer claimed him. That moment was before the warnings, before the secrets, before the promise she had whispered through tears at his hospital bedside. Her memory of him was never far away. She was 12 again, standing on their Montana property, the world vast and empty. In her small hands, her father's Remington 700 felt impossibly heavy. A steel plate 300 yards away shimmered in the summer heat. "Breathe with the earth, Maya," he had told her, his voice calm but insistent. "Feel its rotation. The planet is spinning at over 1,000 miles an hour, yet you don't fall off. That's the relationship you need with your rifle. Become one system." She had squinted through the scope, confused and frustrated. Tears threatened to spill. "Why do I need to learn this, Dad? None of the other kids at school have to shoot rifles." David Johnson had knelt down, eye level with her, his large hands steady on her shoulders. Hands that had once taken shots impossible to most men. Hands that had saved lives she would never know about. "Not to take life, sweetheart," he had said softly. "To protect it. This skill isn't good or evil. It's the heart behind it that matters." The memory dissolved like smoke as the armory door swung open. Captain Logan Reed entered with the confidence of a man who never wondered if he belonged. At 35, hardened by 3 combat tour, he carried himself like a weapon sharpened by fire. His green beret tab gleamed alongside rows of ribbons, stories of valor in metal and cloth. He was known for one legend above all, a confirmed kill at 2,500 meters, a shot so long that it was whispered about in the barracks with awe and doubt in equal measure. He placed an M2010 enhanced sniper rifle on Maya's bench with casual authority, like a man laying down a challenge. "I need this fixed by tomorrow," he said, scopes drifting right at distance. Maya nodded, her mask of professionalism never slipping. "I'll take a look, sir. At what range are you noticing the drift?" "Started around 800. Gets worse the further out you go." His tone carried subtle condescension, the edge of a combat veteran addressing someone he believed was just a support worker. Recalibrate the scope. Should be simple enough. She kept her eyes low, her hands steady, moving over the weapon with quiet confidence. Torque mounts. Secure. Barrel. Clean. Nothing obvious. Then, as she turned the elevation turret with careful precision, she saw it. A Minitov angle adjustment off by 0.3 mils. And stranger still, the setting had been tuned for the wrong hemisphere. Her brow furrowed. Your MOA adjustment is off by 0.3, she murmured. And the compensation it's set for the southern hemisphere. Were you deployed recently, sir? Reed froze, his impatience shifted into suspicion. Afghanistan 3 weeks ago. How the hell did you know that? Maya cursed herself inwardly. She had revealed too much. Few outside advanced sniper school even understood drift, the subtle way the Earth's rotation pulled a bullet east or west depending on hemisphere. It was a detail buried in week 6 of sniper school, not in armorer training, not in anyone's training really, except her father's. The settings, she said carefully, they're configured for the southern hemisphere. It happens after deployment rotations. Common mistake. Reed stepped closer, his presence heavy in the small room. Most armorers wouldn't catch that. Hell, most snipers don't. And you said Mills instead of MOA. That's sniper terminology. Who exactly are you, Johnson? Her face was calm, neutral. Inside, her pulse quickened. 5 years she had hidden in plain sight. And now, in one careless moment, she had cracked her own. Just doing my job, sir. I've worked on a lot of sniper systems. But Reed wasn't convinced. His gaze narrowed, cutting, searching for what she wasn't saying. Before she could answer, the door opened again. Master Sergeant Daniel Martinez stepped inside with the unhurried confidence of a man who had survived too much to be rattled. At 45, his face bore the weathering of deserts and battlefields. A scar traced his jawline, a reminder of. His reputation was built not on stories told loudly, but on the quiet respect of men who had seen him stand his ground when others broke. Reed, he said with a nod, bothering our best armorer. Reed gestured sharply toward Maya. She just explained effect like she's a sniper school instructor. Who is she really? Martinez's expression stayed unreadable, though something flickered in his eyes as he studied Maya more closely. Johnson's one of our best technicians, he said evenly. If she spotted something on your rifle, I'd listen. The tension hung heavy. Reed picked up his weapon, but his suspicion hadn't eased. Have it ready by 600 tomorrow. We've got qualification runs. When the door closed behind him, silence filled the armory. Martinez lingered. His eyes, steady and searching, held on Maya longer than she liked. You know, he said finally, his tone casual but deliberate, I've been watching you for almost 2 years now. Never seen anyone handle weapons like you do, like you were born to it. She kept her hands busy with tools, unwilling to meet his gaze. Just experience, Sergeant. Experience, he echoed softly, as if tasting the word. You remind me of someone I once served with. Same way of seeing things others missed. Johnson's a common name, but any relation to David Johnson, 5th Special Forces, later attached to certain operations no one talks about. Her heart stuttered, but her face stayed neutral. He was my father. Martinez nodded slowly, as though confirming a suspicion he'd carried quietly for years. His eyes softened. Ghost Johnson, one of the finest shooters who ever lived. Maya swallowed hard, her mask cracking just enough for a flicker of emotion to slip through. Your secret's safe with me, Martinez said quietly. But Reed won't let this go. Men like him can't stand mysteries, especially ones that threaten their pride. When he finally left, she sagged against the workbench, her carefully built fortress of calm trembling. Her father's words came back to her, whispered across time. There are people who will want to use what I've taught you, Maya. People who see skills like ours as weapons, not as choices. Stay invisible. Stay safe. but invisibility had just become impossible. Why was he at her door in the middle of the night? The sharp knock shattered the quiet of Maya's small apartment. 3 short raps, then silence. Her hand went instinctively to the drawer where her 19 rested. She moved silently, every step calculated, the way her father had taught her: never approach the door straight on, never stand in the frame. Through the peephole she saw him, Captain Logan Reed. Uniform still on, shoulders stiff with restrained tension. It was 21:30 hours. He had no reason to be here. She unlocked the door but left the chain in place. "Captain Reed, it's late." His expression was hard to read. "We need to talk, not through a chain." "This isn't appropriate, sir. Whatever issue you have with your weapon can wait until." "This isn't about the weapon." His voice dropped low, urgent. "It's about who you really are and what you're doing at Fort." The accusation hung in the air like a live grenade. Maya kept her tone measured. "If you have concerns, you should take them through official channels." Reed leaned closer, his voice sharper. "I spent the afternoon making calls. Your paperwork checks out barely, but your background, thin, too thin. 5 years at one of America's most sensitive installations with almost nothing before that. No deployments. No prior units anyone can vouch for. That doesn't happen, not here." Inside, her mind raced. Denial would fuel his suspicion. Confrontation would escalate it. Silence was safer, but silence was dangerous too. Before she could answer, another voice spoke from the shadows of the hallway. Calm, steady, familiar. "That's enough, Captain." Reed straightened. Master Sergeant Martinez stepped into view, his presence shifting the weight of the moment instantly. Reed might outrank him, but rank meant less in the quiet power struggles of special operations. Respect mattered more. Survival mattered most. "With respect, Sergeant," Reed said tightly, "this is a security matter. If she's hiding something, you're pursuing this off-duty, out of uniform, and in the private residence of a civilian contractor." Martinez's voice remained conversational, but there was steel underneath. "That's not procedure, not even close." Reed's jaw tightened, but the rebuke landed. Military protocol was sacred ground. "Johnson isn't who she claims to be," he insisted, though his tone carried less certainty now. Martinez held his gaze. "I knew her father, served with him. David Johnson gave everything for this country, including his life. His daughters earned more right to be here than most of us." The revelation hit Reed like a shot. His suspicion wavered, replaced with something closer to disbelief. "Ghost Johnson was your father." Maya neither confirmed nor. Her silence was its own shield. Martinez stepped between them, his calm final. "Captain, I suggest you return to base. Pursue your concerns tomorrow, through the proper channels." Reed hesitated, then reluctantly he left. When the hallway emptied, Maya slid the chain free and opened the door. Martinez was still there, his presence heavy but not unwelcome. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. He stepped inside at her silent invitation. His eyes scanned the apartment automatically, the habit of a man who had lived too long with threats. Only once satisfied did he speak. "I served with your father," he said, lowering himself into the single armchair. "In places that don't exist, doing things no one will ever admit happened. He saved my life twice. Supporting his daughter is the least I can do." Maya stayed standing, arms folded, the distance deliberate. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because Reed won't let this go. He's too proud, too curious. And because I saw the way you handled his rifle in the armory. You move like your father, same instincts, same gift." The word hung in the air. Maya's jaw tightened. "I don't shoot anymore." Martinez studied her. "Your father kept his family separate, never spoke about you, but I knew, I suspected. And now, you've got a decision to make. Reed won't stop digging. If you don't give him something, he'll bring the whole chain of command into this. That's a spotlight you don't want." Maya turned away, her eyes drawn to the single framed photograph on her wall. Her and her father, fishing rods in hand, smiles unguarded in a rare moment of peace. He looked strong there, untouchable, nothing like the man who would later wither in a hospital bed, whispering warnings with the last of his strength. "Promise me you won't use what I taught you," he had said, his grip weak but urgent. "Not for them, not for anyone. They'll come for you, Maya, just like they came for me. Stay invisible, stay safe." She had promised, but promises had a way of cracking under pressure. Martinez's voice broke through her memory. "One demonstration, that's all it would take. Controlled conditions. Show him who you are, then maybe he'll leave it alone." Her throat tightened. "I can't." "You can," Martinez said softly. "And maybe you should. Ask yourself what your father would want. You breaking a promise once in order to keep your life from unraveling, or Reed digging until he exposes everything he tried to keep hidden." The question cut deep, because there was no clean answer. Maya's gaze lingered on her father's smile in the photo. She closed her eyes, searching for guidance in silence. When she opened them, her decision had been made. "One demonstration," she said. "Tomorrow morning, just you, me, and Reed, then it's done." Martinez nodded, his expression unreadable. At the door he paused. "Your father was the best I ever saw, but sometimes I wonder if you might be better." When he left, the apartment felt colder. Maya walked to her bedroom closet, slid aside a false panel, and revealed a fireproof safe. Inside was the part of her father's life he had tried to bury, but not destroy. A leather-bound journal filled with formulas and notes in his precise handwriting. Ballistic calculations that went far beyond military manuals. Not just equations, but philosophies written in the language of wind and gravity. She ran her hand across the pages, the numbers and diagrams sparking memories of Montana mornings, endless training sessions where math dissolved into intuition. At extreme distance, you're not just shooting through space, Maya. You're shooting through time. At the bottom of the safe lay a sealed envelope. Her father's block letters spelled out 4 words: "For Maya, when necessary." She touched it but didn't open it. Not yet. Not until she had to. Instead, she returned the journal to its hiding place and sat in the quiet of her apartment, the shadows pressing close. Outside, headlights glowed from a sedan parked across the street. She hadn't noticed it before. Now the figure inside sat motionless, watching. Her pulse slowed, her instincts sharpening. This wasn't a neighbor, wasn't local police. The positioning was too deliberate. Sight lines perfect to both front and rear exits. Professional surveillance. Military intelligence. Her father's warning whispered again. "They'll find you eventually." Maya killed the lights, moved low through the apartment, and slid against the wall beside the window. She didn't need to look again to know what it meant. The invisible war her father had feared was no longer distant. It had found her. Why did the air feel different that morning? Dawn at Fort painted the sky in watercolor shades of crimson and gold. The base was quiet, the kind of quiet that belonged to early hours before the machinery of war woke up. Maya Johnson walked toward the range, her boots crunching against dew-damp earth, the air sharp in her lungs. She should have felt nervous. Instead, she felt strangely steady. The decision was made, no going back now. She wore her work uniform, nothing unusual, nothing to draw attention. But she carried herself differently. No longer trying to blend in, she moved with a fluid confidence, a predator walking into open ground. To an untrained observer, she was just another contractor heading to a task. To men like Martinez, waiting at the range with Captain Reed, her presence told a different story. Martinez stood easy, arms folded, the calm of a man who had already measured the weight of the day. Reed stood beside him, shoulders squared, suspicion mixed with curiosity. "Miss Johnson," Reed greeted, deliberately formal. "Captain," her eyes were already scanning the range. The wind whispered through pines, a light northeast crosswind 3 to 5 miles per hour. Humidity higher than yesterday. Temperature cool but rising. All variables cataloged, filed, accounted for. I agreed to one demonstration, Maya said. After this, we go back to work. No more questions. Reed gave a short nod. Fair enough. On a table lay 3 rifles, a standard M4 carbine, an M110 semi-automatic sniper system, and Reed's own M2010 bolt action. Martinez gestured toward them. Your choice. Maya didn't hesitate. She picked up Reed's M2010, the most challenging, the most telling. A silent message. She wasn't afraid to step directly into his arena. Distance, she asked. 300 meters, Reed said, the faintest edge of doubt in his voice. She loaded the rifle smoothly, each motion efficient, practiced, unhurried. Then she lay prone on the mat, her body settling into alignment like water finding its level. Through the scope, the silhouette target came into view. She adjusted settings with care, not rushing, not showing off. Her breathing slowed, heartbeat steady, finger finding the trigger with natural ease. The first shot cracked the still morning. Through the scope, the bullet punched dead center into the head of the silhouette. She chambered another round, worked the bolt like second nature, and fired again. And again. 5 rounds total, each striking within a half-inch of the last, a grouping so tight it might have been made by a machine. Reed said nothing, but his crossed arms loosened. 500, Martinez directed quietly. Maya adjusted, compensating for the increased distance. The wind had picked up slightly, now nudging from the northeast. She felt it, the way her father had taught her, not as math, but as movement in the world itself. Her adjustments were instinctual, almost subconscious. 5 more rounds, 5 perfect center mass hits. Reed's silence grew heavier. 800, he said at last, his voice unreadable. Now it was no longer routine. 800 meters pushed into real sniper territory, where bullet arc and wind drift became more than minor corrections. She took longer this time, settling, breathing, connecting with the weapon until rifle and shooter blurred into one system. The shots rang out. 5 rounds. 5 impacts clustered so tightly that, when they walked downrange later, they would see only one ragged hole torn into the paper. Reed's suspicion had shifted fully into something else. His jaw worked as if chewing over words he wasn't ready to say. Not bad, he muttered. Maya stood smoothly, dusted her hands. Are we finished? Not quite, Martinez said, glancing at Reed. Captain, place a target anywhere. Reed hesitated, then moved to the controls. Far downrange, a motorized target whirred into position. 1,000 meters, a distance that tested even seasoned snipers, twice what most soldiers ever shot. One shot, Reed said, quiet but firm. Maya lowered herself again. She didn't rush, didn't speak. She simply let the world narrow to scope, breath, heartbeat, and the almost imperceptible pull of the earth itself. The trigger broke clean. Through the scope, she saw the bullet arc across distance, a thin vapor trail marking its invisible journey. 4 full seconds later, the target's head split open, the round striking exactly where she had placed her will. When she stood, she handed Reed the rifle. As agreed, one demonstration. Reed took it without a word. His face betrayed the war inside him, pride battling respect, doubt battling awe. Where did you learn to shoot like that? He finally asked. Maya held his gaze. It takes a lifetime. Martinez broke the silence. We're done here. But as they turned to leave, Reed's voice stopped them. That wasn't just skill, that was something else. He struggled as though the words themselves resisted. I've never seen anyone shoot like that, not even Tier 1 operators. Maya's answer was soft, measured. My father called it seeing through the bullet's eyes, not sending it downrange, but extending your will through time and space. Reed swallowed. His suspicion had shifted to something harder to manage, admiration and fear. By the time Maya walked away, the sun warming her shoulders. She felt both pride and unease. She had revealed more than she intended. Pride in honoring her father's teaching warred with dread that the invisible life she had built was unraveling. She didn't notice Martinez watching her departure with troubled eyes, or the way he reached for his secure phone once she was gone. When the line connected, his voice was low, careful. "Sir, you need to contact Colonel immediately. It's about David Johnson's daughter. She has her father's gift, maybe more." Colonel James sat alone in his office as the afternoon sun bled through Venetian blinds. At 60, his silver hair and parade-ground posture carried the weight of decades. His desk held a file he hadn't touched in years, its cover stamped classified. The red letters had faded, but the remained sharp. Ghost Protocol. Martinez's call had unsettled him. David Johnson's daughter. Here. At Fort. And not just present, but demonstrating the same uncanny precision that had made her father both legend and liability. His hand rested on the folder, reluctant to break the seal. He remembered David well, soldier, friend, conspirator, a man who had walked away when he saw too much. The intercom buzzed. "Sir, Master Sergeant Martinez is here." "Send him in." Martinez entered, posture crisp, expression steady, waved him into a chair. "Tell me exactly what you saw." "She shoots like her father," Martinez said without hesitation. "Better, maybe. Same connection to the weapon, same intuitive understanding of ballistics. At 1,000 meters, she placed a shot that would challenge our best, and she did it like she was mailing a letter." Closed his eyes briefly, and read. Impressed, suspicion eased, for now, but if she's anything like her father, others will notice. Opened the folder at last. Inside were photographs, reports, fragments of a story that never made it into official history. One photograph froze his gaze. David Johnson in desert fatigues, standing beside him, and a thin, scholarly man with wire-rimmed glasses. The man was no soldier. He was a scientist. David wasn't just an exceptional shooter, said almost to himself. He was part of something called Project Athena, late Cold War carried on under new names. This man, Dr. Alexander, brilliant, obsessed, believed certain people had natural neurological advantages, could be enhanced. Super soldiers, Martinez asked quietly. Not in the comic book sense, but close enough. People who processed information faster than computers, who could read the environment like a book. David was their greatest success. Until he walked away. Nodded grimly, because he realized some of the targets weren't what he'd been told. Not terrorists, not warlords, political dissidents, civilians. He threatened to go public. They cut a deal. Retirement, silence, provided he stayed off the radar. And now his daughter shows the same abilities, Martinez said softly. Closed the file, his jaw set. Which means we'll want her, and always gets what he wants. For a long moment, silence filled the office. Martinez shifted in his chair. So what do we do? His eyes hardened. What David would have wanted, we protect her, even if it means from our own side. On his desk, another photograph lay tucked into the folder. David Johnson, rifle in hand, standing in some nameless desert. Across the bottom, in faded ink, a note written in his own hand. Not all enemies wear different flags. Tap the photo with a finger. If it's still active, Maya Johnson has no idea what's coming. Back in her small apartment, Maya sat at her kitchen table with the lockbox open. The envelope with her father's handwriting lay untouched. Beside it, the black USB drive blinked faintly in the light. Whatever was on it, her father had risked everything to leave it behind. And now headlights still burned across the street, watching, waiting. The invisible war had begun again, and this time she was at its center. Why was suddenly uneasy in his own office? The blinds threw slats of shadow across his desk, stripping the classified folder in prison bars of light. Colonel James had faced battlefields, insurgents, bureaucrats, But the name Martinez had spoken hours earlier still rattled in his chest. Dr. Alexander. He hadn't said that name aloud in years. Now was here at Fort. The office door opened without a knock. A tall, slender man in a tailored suit stepped in, his wire-rimmed glasses flashing under the overhead lights. Two younger men in dark suits flanked the door outside, silent, watchful. Didn't stand, he didn't need to, Doctor. Colonel said pleasantly, his voice smooth with practiced civility. It's been some time. Gestured stiffly to the chair opposite his desk. This is a secure briefing. Yes, I can see that. Eyes flicked across the open file. Ghost protocol, how nostalgic. He smiled thinly, then turned to Martinez and Captain Reed, who had been summoned at request. And you must be the witnesses to Miss Johnson's remarkable performance this morning. Martinez didn't answer. Reed's jaw clenched. The fact knew already confirmed what they all feared. Nothing at Fort happened outside his reach. His voice cut through. What do you want? Folded his hands neatly, as though preparing for a lecture. Imagine a sniper who could guarantee first-round hits at distances beyond 3,000 meters, who could account for variables no ballistic computer could process, who could neutralize threats anywhere on the globe with surgical precision, zero collateral damage. How many American lives would that save? It was rehearsed, the pitch of a man who had made the same speech in countless rooms. His eyes hardened. David Johnson could do those things, until he discovered the people you pointed him at weren't who you claimed they were. For the first time, smile cracked, annoyance flickering beneath the polish. David made unfortunate choices based on incomplete information, but his abilities were real and hereditary. Reed spoke up, his suspicion of Maya now transformed into something protective. She's a civilian contractor, not your research subject. Of course, said smoothly, which is why I'm proposing a voluntary arrangement. Miss Johnson would receive exceptional compensation, full benefits, a position within the Advanced Defense Research Projects Unit. And if she declines, asked, his tone flat. His eyes gleamed. Let's not focus on negatives. This matter falls under Presidential Finding 1327. Any interference would constitute a breach of national security. The words dropped like a blade across the room. Even Martinez's steady composure faltered. After left, silence lingered like smoke. He's going to take her, Reed said finally, his voice low, furious. With or without her consent. Closed the folder, his face grim. Not if we move first. The knock at Maya's door came at 22:17. 3 short raps, too long, a pattern meant to reassure. Identify, she said through the door at low ready. Martinez not alone. Through the peephole she confirmed, Martinez with Reed beside him. She let them in, securing the door quickly behind. You're being watched, she said simply. We know. Martinez's eyes swept her small apartment, checking angles. Arrived 3 hours ago. He'll meet with you tomorrow, with an offer you won't be allowed to refuse. Maya's pulse spiked. She thought of the photograph she had found in her father's lockbox, her father, and a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses. Athena Cobble, 2008. Now she had a name to match the face. Alexander, she murmured. Reed looked startled. You know about him. I found a photograph, my father and him. Her voice tightened. The word Athena written on the back. Martinez exchanged a glance with Reed. No more hiding. Project Athena, Martinez confirmed. Classified program, your father was part of it, was the architect. What did they use him for? She asked, though part of her already knew. Targeted eliminations, Reed said grimly. Shots at distances no one thought possible, operations no one could trace. Your father believed he was killing terrorists, but later, he discovered some targets weren't terrorists at all. Political dissidents, civilians, people inconvenient to certain interests. Maya's throat tightened. Assassinations. Martinez nodded slowly. That's why he left, why he made you promise. The room went quiet, the weight of truth pressing against the walls. We'll be here tomorrow, Reed said finally. With official authorization. If you refuse, he'll take you anyway. Maya's mind worked rapidly. Options collapsed one by one. She thought of the encrypted USB drive hidden beneath her floorboards, her father's last safeguard. I need to know what's on that drive, she said. Whatever leverage he had, it's probably there. It's encrypted, Reed asked. Yes, military grade. Reed nodded. I know someone, former NSA cryptographer. He can try, but we'd need at least 48 hours. You won't have 48, Martinez said grimly. Won't wait, he'll push. Maya looked between them. Two men divided by history, united by the same fear, that she would disappear into his program and never come out again. My father prepared me for this moment, she said quietly. I just didn't understand it until now. Morning came with sterile sunlight streaming through Colonel's office. Maya sat opposite, who radiated polite authority, his assistants arranging files and tablets around him. Stood by the window, his silence both shield and signal. Miss Johnson said warmly, extending a hand. A pleasure. I worked closely with your father, extraordinary man. Maya shook it, her face unreadable. I understand you've come a long way. For talent like yours, distance is meaningless. One of his assistants placed a tablet before her. Footage rolled, her demonstration from the range, multiple camera angles, her subtle adjustments, her flawless grouping. Every movement captured. Our base security systems are very capable, said smoothly. What you did was beyond standard, adjusting for wind before instruments detected changes, compensating for drift instinctively. Your father had the same neurological advantages, and you've inherited them. Maya kept her voice level. And now you want me in your program. Not want, corrected. Need. I'm offering you a role few ever receive. Salary, benefits, resources, the chance to serve your country at the highest level. Her eyes didn't leave his. And if I decline? Smile never faltered, but his eyes hardened. Your abilities are a national security asset. Presidential Finding 1327 authorizes securing assets through various means. I would prefer your cooperation. The threat was naked now, wrapped in polite phrasing. I need time to consider, Maya said. Of course, slid a card across the table, until tomorrow morning. When he left, silence pressed heavy against the room. He's not giving me a choice, Maya whispered. No, said quietly, he is. Maya exhaled slowly, her thoughts tightening into clarity. Then I'll give him one, on my terms. Studied her, then leaned forward. How? Something irresistible, she said. Something that buys us time. His eyes sharpened. Extreme distance. A shot beyond anything ever documented. 3,800 meters. Even won't resist the chance to see that. Preparations alone will take days. Maya nodded once. A plan forming, dangerous, fragile, but a plan. His voice dropped to almost a whisper. It's a gamble, but it might be our only one. That night the sedan still sat across the street from Maya's apartment, watching, waiting. But inside, Maya wasn't waiting anymore. She had a direction, a shot no one believed possible. And in her father's leather journal, she had the calculations. At 3,800 meters, a bullet wouldn't just cross distance. It would cross time itself. And Maya Johnson would be asked to prove whether she could follow it there. Why did the desert always feel like judgment? The transport plane's engines droned, a steady vibration that worked into Maya's bones as she sat against the fuselage wall. Around her, crates of equipment rattled with each air current. The cabin smelled of oil, dust, and recycled air, the scent of deployments she was never supposed to know. Through the small porthole, endless white sand spread below like the surface of another world. White Sands Missile Range, A place chosen for its isolation, its silence, its ability to hide impossible things. She had agreed to demand, but only with her condition: a demonstration at 3,800 meters, a shot so extreme it would require days of preparation. That bought her time, but time was fragile, slipping faster with each hour. Across the cabin, Captain Reed sat stiff, his eyes fixed on her. Distrust had shifted into something more complex, a strange mix of admiration, protection, and fear. Martinez sat beside him, silent, his presence solid, his loyalty unspoken but constant. "You ready for this?" Reed finally asked. Maya met his gaze. "Were you when you took your longest shot?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "No one's ready for distance like that, not really." She almost smiled. "Then we're the same." But they were not entirely. Reed had volunteered, she had been cornered. The plane shuddered as wheels touched down on the long desert runway. When they disembarked, the heat struck like a physical blow, dry air clawing at skin and lungs. Ahead, a convoy of black SUVs waited, engines humming. Stood beside them, immaculate as ever in his tailored suit, his expression polished but edged with victory. "Miss Johnson," he said smoothly, "welcome to White Sands, a place where history will be made." She didn't answer. Her silence was her only weapon. The range sprawled across miles of sand and scrub, dotted with sensor arrays, weather stations, and observation towers. Temporary structures had been erected: tents, mobile command posts, a small air-conditioned trailer reserved for. At the firing line, a reinforced platform held the rifle had commissioned for the test. A custom .408, barrel length extended, optics experimental. It gleamed in the sun like a predator waiting to be fed. 3,800 meters, said, gesturing toward a distant steel target barely visible against the desert horizon. No one has ever recorded a confirmed shot at that distance. If you succeed, you will not only validate Project Athena, but redefine the limits of precision engagement. Maya studied the target. The shimmer of heat waves blurred it. The Earth's curve itself bent against her. At that range, a bullet would be in flight for nearly 7 seconds. Variables exponentially: wind layers, air density, even the effect amplified across distance. It was madness, and it was exactly what she needed. "I'll need 3 days," she said, "to study conditions, build the firing solution." Smiled, "Of course, take whatever you require. Success is inevitable." His certainty chilled her. That night, Maya sat in a dimly lit barracks room, the USB drive plugged into Reed's ruggedized laptop. The NSA contact he had called in worked remotely, his voice filtered through secure comms. "This is heavy encryption," the man said. "Your father didn't want anyone cracking it quickly, but I can give you fragments, enough to understand the shape of what's inside." Lines of code scrolled. Then words began to appear. Reports, coordinates, photographs of men and women, some in military uniforms, some in civilian clothes, dates, notations. Martinez leaned closer, his jaw tightening. "These are hit lists." Maya scrolled further, her throat dry. Her father's handwriting appeared in scanned notes, interlaced with the files. "Target not hostile. Orders, refused mission." Reed's voice was low, tight. "This is evidence. Proof used Ghost Johnson for assassinations. Not enemies of America, enemies of Sagenda." Maya's hand trembled on the mouse. She opened one more file, a blurred surveillance photo. A man in glasses stepping into a black car, younger but unmistakable. The metadata stamped the image: Kabul 2008. Underneath, her father had written a single line: "If you're reading this, trust no one wearing a suit." She closed her eyes, swallowing hard. Her father's warnings weren't paranoia, they were prophecy. "We need to copy everything," Martinez said. Reed shook his head. "We can't. We'll have monitoring set up. If he sees data moving, he'll shut us down." "Then what?" Maya asked. Reed looked at her, his expression conflicted. We wait, use the demonstration to buy more time, then get this drive into the right hands. Whose hands? No one answered. The days that followed blurred into calculations, measurements, and endless silence under the desert sun. Maya lay prone for hours, watching mirage shimmer, mapping wind currents across the barren landscape. She recorded temperature shifts by the minute, tracked barometric pressure, every variable until numbers gave way to instinct. At night, she wrote in her father's journal, layering his formulas with her own refinements. Each entry became part science, part prayer. The bullet is time. My will is the vector. Distance is not the enemy. Doubt is. Martinez watched quietly, rarely speaking. Reed hovered, torn between duty and loyalty, his suspicion of growing with each passing hour. On the third night, Maya slipped outside the barracks into the cool desert air. Stars blazed overhead, sharp and infinite. For the first time in years, she let herself remember Montana nights with her father, lying in the grass, the same stars above them, his voice teaching her constellations. Every shot begins up there, he had said once. You may think you're firing across land, but you're not. You're firing through space, through Earth's spin, through time itself. Her eyes stung. She whispered into the night, I'm not ready, Dad. But silence gave no comfort. Only the steady hum of generators and the unseen eyes of men. The morning of the test dawned harsh and merciless. Maya lay prone behind her cheek pressed to the stock, the scope framing a target nearly invisible at 3,800 meters. The world narrowed to reticle, breath, heartbeat. Behind her stood with Reed, Martinez, and a cluster of observers. Cameras recorded every angle. The data would be analyzed, archived, weaponized. Maya adjusted her scope, her mind running through equations one last time. Crosswinds layered at different altitudes, drift, spin drift, humidity, barometric pressure. The math said the shot was impossible, but her father had taught her to see beyond math. 7.2 seconds, she whispered to herself. That's how long it takes, enough time to live a lifetime, enough time to change one. Her finger found the trigger. And then something flickered at the edge of her vision. Movement near the observation tower, a glint of glass, the unmistakable shimmer of a scope aimed not at the target but at her. Her body froze. This wasn't a demonstration, it was a trap. She shifted slightly, her breath steady, her heart pounding. Through the scope, the distant steel target waited. But closer, far closer, death had already taken aim. And the shot she was about to take might not just prove her ability. It might decide whether she lived at all. Why was the crosshair aimed at her instead of the target? Maya's lungs froze. Through the wavering shimmer of desert heat, she had caught it, the telltale glint of glass, the ghost of a scope locked onto her from the tower's shadow. This wasn't just a demonstration. Someone was here to erase her. Her finger rested on the trigger of but the steel target at 3,800 meters blurred in her mind. The real threat was closer, hidden, waiting for her to fire so they could fire back. 7 seconds of bullet flight, 7 seconds of vulnerability. Something wrong. His voice floated behind her, calm, smooth, smug. He had no idea, or maybe he did. Maya kept her tone steady, winds changing. Martinez shifted slightly, sensing something in her posture. He followed her gaze toward the tower, his eyes narrowing. Then it happened, a flash of light, a muzzle brake catching the sun. Down, Martinez barked. The shot cracked the desert air, echoing across dunes. Maya rolled instinctively, the round slamming into sand where her skull had rested a heartbeat before. Grit sprayed her cheek, burning like fire. Reed dove beside her, his M4 snapping to his shoulder. Observers scattered, shouts tearing the quiet apart, yelled for cover. But didn't move. He stood calm, almost expectant. Maya didn't think, she reacted. Swinging she found the glint in her scope again. Instinct took over. Breath slowed, heartbeat steadied, trigger broke clean. 7 seconds. In those 7 seconds, her life stretched into eternity. Montana mornings, her father's voice, the promise she had made to never use his gift, and the reality that using it now was the only reason she might live to see another sunrise. Impact. Through her scope, the shooter crumpled, rifle tumbling from the tower. Dust kicked up as the body hit sand. Silence, then chaos. Soldiers rushed the tower. Radios crackled, barked orders. Reed pulled Maya behind the barricade, checking her for blood. "You hit." She shook her head. Her hands trembled, but not from fear, from the clarity that came only in moments like this, when the bullet wasn't just lead, but truth. Martinez crouched low, his voice cutting through the din. That wasn't a test, that was an execution order. Maya's eyes found. The man stood calm amid panic, adjusting his glasses, his face unreadable. "You knew," she whispered. Finally smiled, faint and cold. "Congratulations, Miss Johnson. You've just proven more than I ever hoped." Her stomach turned. This wasn't proof for her, it was proof for him. The debrief happened in a sterile conference room that night, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Sat at the head of the table, flanked by his aides. Sat opposite, his face stone. Martinez and Reed stood behind Maya, silent shadows. "The incident is regrettable," began smoothly. "But your response was flawless. One shot neutralization of an unknown hostile, at 3,800 meters no less. This is beyond precedent, beyond imagination. Project Athena is validated." "Validated," his voice was steel. "A contractor was nearly killed, on your watch." "On our watch," corrected, his eyes flicking toward with controlled disdain. "And she survived. Not just survived, excelled. That is the point." Maya leaned forward, her voice sharp. "Who was the shooter?" Smile didn't reach his eyes. "Unidentified, perhaps a disgruntled extremist. We'll investigate." "Liar," she said flatly. The word hung in the room. Reed stiffened, waiting for the explosion. Martinez's jaw tightened. Silence was approval enough. Only adjusted his glasses. "Miss Johnson, emotion clouds judgment. You should be celebrating your achievement." "My father warned me about you," Maya said, each word deliberate. "Warned me about what you try to turn me into. I won't be your weapon." For the first time's mask cracked. His voice dropped sharp. "You don't have a choice." Slammed a hand against the table, his voice rising. "She has every choice. Not while I command this installation." The tension in the room sharpened like a blade. For a moment, no one breathed. Then leaned back, regaining composure. "This isn't about you, Colonel. This is national security, and if you stand in the way, you will be removed." The words were calm, but the threat was final. Later, in the quiet of the barracks, Maya sat on her cot, the weight of the day pressing down. Reed paced the small space like a caged animal. Martinez leaned against the wall, silent but steady. "They'll come again," Reed muttered. "Next time they won't miss." Maya opened her father's journal, tracing the familiar handwriting. Not all enemies wear different flags. The words echoed in her mind until they were more than memory. They were warning. Command. "I can't keep running," she whispered, "but I can't surrender either." Martinez stepped closer. "Then what?" Her eyes lifted, sharp, alive with something more than fear. "Then we turn this against him. Wants proof. Let's give him proof of what he's done. Of the bodies my father tried to protect. We leak the files, expose him." Reed stopped packing. "That's treason against the government." "No," she said firmly. Against men who corrupted it. There's a difference." Martinez nodded slowly. "She's right. This isn't treason, it's redemption." The silence that followed was heavy, fragile. Finally, Reed spoke, his voice quieter, steadier. "Then we need allies, people outside the chain of command, people doesn't control." Who? Maya asked. Reed's gaze hardened. I know someone, a journalist. She's been waiting years for proof Athena existed. The risk was enormous. One leak and would know, but staying silent was worse. Silence was death. Maya closed her father's journal and slipped the USB drive into her pocket. Her father had left her the truth. It was her choice what to do with it. Outside, the desert wind howled against thin walls, carrying dust and grit. It sounded like whispers, like ghosts. In his trailer poured a glass of scotch, his reflection fractured in the window's dark pane. His aide entered quietly. Sir, the shooter has been confirmed. One of ours. Didn't react, disposable. Yes, sir, no ties left. Good, then the narrative holds. An unknown hostile, a clean story. He sipped, eyes narrowing. Johnson won't resist long, she's her father's daughter, and he always thought he had a choice until he learned he didn't. The aide hesitated, and if she fights harder than he did? Smile returned, thin and sharp. Then she'll learn the same lesson. The bullet doesn't ask permission, it simply obeys. Maya lay awake long after lights out, staring at the ceiling, her father's words echoing like scripture. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Tomorrow she would act. And when she did, the world had built would begin to crumble. Why did the desert feel smaller now, like its silence was closing in? Maya walked across the cracked asphalt of White Sands airstrip, the USB drive heavy in her pocket. The sun burned overhead, shadows sharp as blades. Reed walked a pace behind her, restless, checking over his shoulder every few steps. Martinez flanked them, his calm hiding a current of tension. The plan was fragile. Reed's journalist contact was their only hope, a woman who had been chasing whispers of Project Athena for years. If they could get the files to her, the truth might survive beyond reach. But moving the drive meant exposure, and always new. Back in the barracks, Reed set up a secure satellite uplink, his fingers working quickly over the rugged laptop. Static hissed, then a faint voice crackled through. Reed, that you? Yeah, he answered, his tone low, urgent. I've got something, proof of Athena, names, files, but we don't have much time. The woman's voice tightened. Send it, whatever you've got. Maya slipped the USB into the port. The files appeared, endless folders of targets and orders, her father's notes woven between them like bones through flesh. She felt her throat tighten. Sending this wasn't just exposure. It was betrayal of silence, of the vow her father had forced on her. But it was also freedom. Reed hit transfer. Data began to move, percentage ticking upward. 10, 15, 20. Then the screen flickered. A message flashed in red, unauthorized transmission detected. Martinez swore, they're monitoring the line. The laptop froze, then crashed. A knock thundered against the door, 3 sharp raps. Open up, a voice barked, military, cold. Reed yanked the drive free, shoving it back into Maya's hand. Martinez drew his sidearm. Hide it, he hissed. Maya slipped it into the lining of her boot, just as the door swung open. 2 MPs stepped inside, their faces unreadable. Miss Johnson, doctor requests your presence, now. The words weren't optional. The trailer's air conditioning hummed faintly, cold air clashing with desert heat. Stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back. Miss Johnson, he said without turning, did you enjoy your evening? Maya stayed silent. Silence was safer than lies. He finally turned, his expression calm, polished. I know you tried to send the files. To a journalist, no less. Disappointing, but predictable. Reed stiffened, his jaw tight. Martinez's eyes narrowed. Smile sharpened. Did you really believe I wouldn't anticipate betrayal? Athena exists because of vigilance, because of control, and because people like your father and now you were foolish enough to think ideals outweighed necessity. Maya forced herself to meet his gaze. You murdered civilians, dissidents, anyone who threatened your power. That's not necessity, that's corruption. For a moment his expression hardened. Then it smoothed again, the mask slipping back into place. History won't remember the details, only results, and if you cooperate, history will remember you as the one who redefined warfare, not as a fugitive, not as a casualty. He let the word hang in the air. Casualty. Maya's hands curled into fists at her sides. Every instinct screamed to fight, to resist, but had leverage, too much. Cameras, soldiers, authority itself bent to his will. Take her back, ordered quietly. Tomorrow the next phase begins. As they were escorted out, Maya caught his eyes in the hallway. He gave the faintest nod, not reassurance but warning. The walls were closing. That night Martinez paced the barracks, his scar catching the low light. He knows everything, every move. We can't keep trying the same way. Reed leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes shadowed. Then we find another angle. He wants a demonstration tomorrow. Another test. That's our chance. Maya sat on the cot, the USB clenched in her hand. She felt her father's handwriting through the metal, as if the words had burned into the drive itself. Trust no one wearing a suit. Another test, she repeated softly. Martinez nodded. We let him think you're cooperating. Meanwhile, we move the files physically. Get them out. Someone has to carry them. Maya's gaze lifted. Then one of you leaves with the drive, tonight before the test. Reed shook his head immediately. No, you're the target. If they sense you're stalling, they'll move fast. We stay together. But Martinez didn't speak right away. His silence was answer enough. Don't, Maya said. His eyes met hers. I've done worse runs with less chance of survival. If I can get across state lines, there are people who will protect this. People doesn't own yet. Her throat tightened. She hated that it made sense. She hated that he was right. Then I'm coming with you, Reed said. Martinez shook his head. No, she needs you here, trusts me more than either of you. I'm the one who can slip out. The silence after was suffocating, choices cut like knives. Finally, Maya extended the drive. Her hand trembled as Martinez took it. If you don't make it, she whispered, then this dies with you. He gave a rare, thin smile. Then I'll make it. The desert night was black as ink when Martinez slipped out. No convoy, no headlights, just a borrowed jeep and the hum of an engine fatting into sand. Maya stood by the window, watching taillights vanish. The weight of the choice pressed on her chest. Beside her, Reed said nothing. His silence was agreement but also grief. Hours passed, then the knock came, 3 sharp raps. Maya froze. Reed's hand went to his sidearm. The door opened without waiting. 2 soldiers stepped inside, their eyes cold. Between them, a bloodied figure stumbled. Martinez. His face was battered, his shirt torn, but his eyes still burned. They threw him onto the floor. The USB drive clattered beside him. Followed, immaculate as ever, adjusting his glasses. Did you think I wouldn't see? Did you think you could run from Athena? Maya's stomach dropped. Betrayal, not from Martinez, from the world itself. His reach was everywhere. He bent, picking up the drive with delicate fingers. You've disappointed me, Miss Johnson, but you still have value. Tomorrow you'll prove it again. And this time there will be no mistakes. He left, the soldiers trailing him. Silence filled the barracks. Martinez lay on the floor, blood on his lips, but his eyes still locked on hers. I tried, he rasped. Maya knelt beside him, tears burning her eyes. I know. Reed's jaw clenched, his fists shaking. Tomorrow's test isn't a test, it's the end game. Maya's hand gripped Martinez's shoulder. Her voice was steady, though her heart raged. Then we ended on our terms. The desert wind howled outside, carrying grit against the thin windows. And in that sound Maya heard it, not defeat, not fear, but resolve. Her father's voice echoing from memory, The bullet isn't obedience, it's choice. And tomorrow she would choose. Why did the firing line feel like a grave? Maya lay prone again, cheek against the stock of the endless white desert stretching before her. The target waited, a steel silhouette glinting under the punishing sun. Cameras were everywhere. Soldiers ringed the perimeter and stood behind her like a shadow she couldn't escape. This wasn't just a demonstration anymore. This was judgment. Today, announced for the assembled observers, Miss Johnson will replicate yesterday's success under controlled conditions, at 3,800 meters, a shot that will confirm her value to Project Athena. He said it as if she were already his, as if her future had been signed away. Stood at the edge of the group, his expression grim, his silence heavy with defiance. Reed hovered close to her flank, tension in every muscle. Martinez, battered but unbroken, sat under guard, his eyes locked on hers, urging, warning, pleading. Maya adjusted her scope, but the steel silhouette in her crosshairs blurred, not because of distance, because it wasn't the real target. The real target was behind her, watching, waiting to own her. His voice lowered, meant only for her ears. Your father resisted, and he lost everything. Don't repeat his mistake. One shot, Miss Johnson. That's all it takes to secure your future. Her father's words echoed from memory. The bullet isn't obedience, it's choice. She inhaled slowly. Her finger touched the trigger. But instead of aiming at the steel plate, she swung her crosshairs off target, past dunes, past scrub, to the observation tower where cameras stood, archiving every detail. She exhaled and fired. The round tore across desert and time, 7 seconds of defiance. The tower exploded in sparks and smoke, cameras shattering, screens going dark. Gasps erupted from the observers. Reed grabbed her shoulder. Martinez struggled to his feet, shock etched into his battered face. And for the first time faltered. His polished calm cracked into rage. "What have you done?" he hissed. Maya rolled to her knees, the rifle smoking beside her. Her voice was steady, sharp. "I chose." The silence that followed was electric, dangerous. Soldiers raised rifles, tension tightening the air. Stepped forward, his voice hard as steel. "Stand down, she's under my command." Turned on him, fury burning in his eyes. "Not anymore. She belongs to Athena." Maya rose, her legs steady despite the tremor in her chest. "I don't belong to you, and I never will." For a moment, no one moved. The desert itself seemed to hold its breath. Then Martinez spoke, his voice raw but strong. "She's not your asset, she's our witness." Reed stepped beside him, rifle lifted, gaze locked on, squared his shoulders, authority in every line of his stance. One by one, the soldiers, rifles lowered, loyalty shifting, hesitation breaking hold. The balance tipped. His face twisted, his glasses flashing in the sun. "You think this changes anything? Files can be buried, witnesses disappear. Athena survives because I survive." He turned, reaching for the drive in his pocket. But Maya moved first, calm, deliberate. She drew her sidearm and leveled it. The desert wind whispered across the line, no sound but her breath. "This is my father's fight anymore," she said quietly. "It's mine." Her finger squeezed. The round cracked, staggered, shock in his eyes, then collapsed into sand. His glasses fell askew, glinting once before the dust swallowed them. Silence. The wind carried grit across the firing line. The sun blazed on, indifferent. Maya lowered the pistol slowly, her breath trembling. She didn't feel triumph, only the hollow weight of inevitability. Stepped forward, his hand resting briefly on her shoulder. "Sometimes," he said softly, "the only way to protect the truth is to carry it yourself." She nodded once, no words left. Weeks later, the desert had given way to mountains. A safe house tucked into pines and quiet. Maya sat at a wooden table, her father's journal open before her. The USB drive rested beside it, untouched since White Sands. Reed entered, setting down a steaming mug. He looked older, heavier, but his eyes were steadier. Martinez sat by the window, scars deeper, gaze distant but alive. Had disappeared into Washington's halls, fighting battles in silence. The files would surface someday, carefully, strategically, not as revenge but as truth. His machine had lost its architect. The rest would crumble piece by piece. But for now, survival was enough. Maya traced her father's handwriting in the journal, the ink faded but still fierce. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. She closed the book. Outside, the wind whispered through trees, freer than the desert, softer than silence. For the first time in years, she let herself breathe. Not as her father's daughter, not as weapon, but as herself.